Hey there, I'm back. It's still kind of stormy and very rainy and very windy, so I hope I can actually maintain power through the whole next while that I'm working on getting a SQL Server container set up on my development environment. I got started this morning and then the power flicked and it shut off my laptop and it rebooted my Wi Fi and it killed my stream and all kinds of insanity happened and so on. But what I did manage to get done in the part of the video that I captured is I got the container image installed on my laptop and I got the local folders created that are going to hold all the database files and stuff like that. I'll show you those things. Let's go to the C drive. So I've got my data, logs, secrets. Data's got some files in it now, all of that stuff. And I was able to create the Game Master Helper Tools SQL database over there. And then after the power came up and my laptop came back online, I was able to get that database created. And I started working on adding a different SQL user that I can use as the admin other than the SA account, because you don't want to leave the SA account active or widely used or anything like that. So for all of the administrative activities, like creating schemas and setting up the initial tables and so on, I created a new SQL login called TDD admin, and I gave it a password that I have in a note elsewhere because I'm not going to remember all these passwords. And we're ready to start thinking about laying out our system. So before I get too far into that, I want to take a look at our system design documentation real quick. Let's go in here to the GM tools and we'll go to docs and we'll go to images. And I want to take a look at this static architecture diagram real quick. Excuse me. Because by default, when you add new stuff to a SQL Server database, it gets dumped into the DBO schema. And that's fine, but in this day and age where we might discover sometime down the road that we need to scale our database out, or we need to partition it differently, or we want to have certain services responsible for certain pieces of data, and so on, lumping everything into DBO is going to make it much, much, much more difficult to do that later on if we decide that we need to. So what I like to do, or what I've started doing when I'm doing new database development, is I'll create schemas within my single database, and then if I need to later on, I can lift those schemas out of the database into their own server instance and migrate that data over to some other service fairly easily. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a schema. And we are going to call it, what are we going to call it? This schema is going to hold the data that's owned by users. So it also wants a schema owner. I think what we need to do first is create a new SQL login. Do we? Because I'm not going to use SQL logins when I get to the cloud. I'm going to use something different for those. Well, no, I'm going to use SQL logins, but I'm going to use, I'm going to hold all of that stuff in a secret store. So let's collect, here's our databases, security. Let's add a login. So our new login, the login name is going to be GH underscore user data. And the password for now, let's make it characters 1. And I'm going to put that in a note elsewhere. So GH underscore user data. It's not a super secure password or anything like that, but we're working locally here. So that's fine. Okay. Now I need to add that login as a user on my database. And the username is going to be GH underscore user data. The login name, GH underscore user data. Check the name, make sure I've got it. Okay. And the default schema, I'm not going to specify that yet. Okay. Now we're going to add a schema. And the schema I'm going to call user data. And the schema owner is going to be GH underscore user data. Let's check the name. Good. Okay. Click OK. And now I should be able to come in here to GH user data, go to properties, come to general, default schema is going to be user data. Let's make sure. User data. Yep, good. I like that. Owned schemas, user data, good. It has a membership of DB data reader, DB data writer, but nothing else. That sounds good. Okay. Now, I want to make sure my TDD admin has access to that schema I just created. So let's come into properties. General, good, permissions, schema name user. Okay, users or roles. GH underscore user data. Okay. And we are going to go to the effective permissions. Because they're the owner, we've effectively got the permissions for everything. Theoretically. Mask update, view change tracking, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And That should be enough. All right. Tables. Let's create a new table. And the first column name is going to be NPC ID. We're going to use a unique identifier. Yeah. No. We're going to use a big int. No. Let's just use an int. Int. Let's use an int. We're not going to allow nulls, and we're going to make this our primary key. And user ID, we'll make it an int as well. We're not going to allow nulls. And I'm just going to hard code this for now because we only have one user, and it's me. And I haven't set up identity and stuff like that yet. Okay, so what kind of things do we need at top level? We need a species name. And it's going to be a varchar 50. We're going to need a background. We're not going to need a background here. That's like extra information. What we do want to have sortable or searchable is vocation name varchar 50. And then we're going to have character data. And I'm going to call this character details. Yeah. I'm going to use a varchar max. We are going to allow nulls here. And then I like to have a created date with a small date time. And then an updated date as a small date time. And finally, a deleted date as a small date time. Created date is going to be required. And we're going to give it a default value of get date. Our NPC ID is an int. And we're going to give it an identity specification. Come on, is identity? Yes. Identity increment, identity seed 1 and 1. Okay, that works. Save. Oh, cancel. Not yet. There's one more thing I want to do. I'm going to insert a column above. And is public. Is public? Yeah. and it's going to be a bit. And I'm not going to allow nulls, and the default value will be false. I think I have to go false. Or do I have to go 0? There we go. So is public is something I'm going to use when I'm storing sample characters that I want to make available to anybody that comes in to look at the application. So what I want to do now is save it, but I'm going to save it as user data dot NPCs. Okay. And let's refresh my tables list. And we've got dbo.userdata.npcs, and that's annoying. So what I got to do is I have to script the table as create to a new query editor window, and it's generating the script for me. And we're not going to create the table dbo dot. We're going to create it as user data dot NPCs. And we are adding a default constraint of false for is public. We're adding a default constraint of get date for created date. Good. And I'm going to run this. Column already has a default bound to it, blah, 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 blah. Can now create constraints or index. Yeah, okay. So I need a new query. Let's refresh this. All right, there's userdata.npcs. And I'm going to have to come in here, and this is a pain. I've got these constraints. I have to delete these. And I got to delete this. Now I should be able to drop my table. Okay. And let's see if I've got defaults here now. Nope, no defaults. Excuse me. Does it have a primary key? Yes, it does. So we got the primary key created, no problem. Oh, I see what I did wrong. I didn't alter the statements down here to put things in the correct, to alter the table in the correct schema. All right, now can I run these just all by themselves? I sure can. Good. And we should be able to refresh the view over here and see my constraints. There we go. Good, good, good. And I am going to not do what I was thinking I would do a second ago. All right, there's that. So we've created a table, we've created a login, we've created a schema, and our database. Let's write some code. I can close out of the terminal here. Yes, close all. Now I'm going to come into the Solution Explorer, and rather than do anything yet, I want to test just super quick, super easy to see if, or to make sure I can connect to my database. So var services, create services, blah, 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 blah. I don't want to do any of that. I am going to add a new folder, and I'm just going to call it tire kick tests. Add a class to this. Loading templates, class, okay. DB access, test, add it. Internal class, DB access test. And I'm going to need to add entity framework as a NuGet package here. Browse, entity framework. I'm going to need to add entity framework core. Yep, install. Core abstractions, analyzers, abstractions, cache and memory, logging options, primitives, apply. Yeah, do the things, I accept. And then I'm going to need SQL Server. Not relational design or MySQL. SQLite. I just saw a SQL Server. SQL Server. There is, server database provider for entity framework, SQL client. That's the one I think I want to use. Data provider for SQL Server. These classes provide access to versions of SQL. Okay, we want to use this Microsoft.data.SQL client because we can see that it has replaced system.data.SQL client, provides access to SQL and encapsulates database specific protocols. Let's install it. And it's doing the things. Wow, that installs a whole bunch of stuff. Whatever. Yep, I accept. I'm going to close that stuff down. And before we go any further, I need to create a new branch. And it's going to be feature / add NPC storage. We're going to base it on main. Bring the changes with me. Yes, please. All right, DB access test. Okay. And I can never remember how to construct a connection string from scratch out of my head. So I'm going to need to add a server explorer. Where are you? You are right here. Let's pin this for now. Data connections, servers. TDD serve. Can I add a data connection? Connect to database. And it is going to be a SQL Server, dotNet Framework Data Provider, SQL Client Data Provider for SQL Server. Let's just use the dotNet Data Provider. Continue. The server name is localhost, 1433. We're going to use SQL Server auth. And for this connection, we're going to use TDD admin. Let me come out here and make sure I've got the username right. Yep, good. Password is going to be that password. I do want to save it. I successfully established that an error occurred during the login process. Authority, okay. So I have to trust the server certificate. Excuse me. And let's use GH tools. Test connection. Test connection succeeded. So let's say okay. And what I want to do, tables, views, all that stuff. Can we get some properties over here? Modify connections, close connection, change view. Let's hit the properties over here. There should be a connection string right here. So I'm going to come in here all the way over and I'm going to copy that. Now, because this is just a cheesy little test thing, private const string SQL connection string. Never do this. Never hard code your connection strings. Ever, ever, ever. Unless you plan to delete them later. And our user ID, yeah, let's go TDD admin, password equals. I can let that be shown there. Save that. Dang blast it. Here we go. Public void string test SQL connection. Make sure we can connect to the SQL Server and query its only lonely table. All right, string result equals string.empty. Return result try catch exception E result equals u.message result equals we did it. Using SQL connection, SQL CN, equals new SQL connection using this connection string. And yes, I know I'm just using basically ADO.NET Core. That's okay. It doesn't like that at all, does it? All right, let's see what kind of overload it wants. I really wish it had stopped popping that stuff up over the top of what I'm trying to type. New SQL connection. Okay, so the connection string. SQLCN. What are you complaining about? Blah, 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 blah. This dot SQLCN. I see what I did wrong. How about that, dummy? I was trying to define or redefine my SQLCN member level variable with the with an actual SQL connection. Using SQL command cmd equals new equals cn dot create command cmd dot command type equals, I'm just going to fire a basic text command at the database. And it's not going to be SQL cn. It is going to be select count of star as numchars from user data dot npcs. Is that the name of my table? Let's make sure. And in fact, select count of star from user data dot npcs. Execute 0 as numchars. Execute. Okay. So we've got our command type, command text, and int character count cut that, drop it up here, equals 0. There are, add the interpolation token, Pop in here, character count, characters, save. Character count equals cmd dot execute scalar. What are you complaining about? That returns an object, right? It do. Var scalar result and if int dot triparse scalar result dot toString out character count. And I don't need to do this as an if. There we go. And that should give us what we want to see. And this is just a super quick test before we put a whole pile of work into this to see if it's actually going to do what we want it to do. So what I'm going to do is we're going to, holy smokes, that's gigantic. All right. Making sure we can connect to the database. Var tester equals new tire kick testing dot nope db access test. String test result equals tester dot test SQL connection console dot write line test result and return. Rendering everything after the return statement useless, but that's fine. Save. Bring up my Solution Explorer. Drop a breakpoint. Pin this. Right-click. Debug. Start new instance. All right. Step over, step in. Pull all of this nonsense down. And I almost never get this right the first time. If I do, I'll be overjoyed. I always forget something silly when I'm first setting up a new database and connection and all of that stuff. Oh yeah, requires an open. Oh, yep, because in order to execute commands, you got to open your database connection. It usually takes me a couple of tries, so let's just be patient with me. And we'll debug. This is one of those like occasional setup tasks that you gotta go through every so often when you're starting a new project. Pretty sure I got a breakpoint up in here. Like remembering all of these different things. What's our scaling result? There we go. Character count is 0. And we can continue. And we did it. There are 0 characters. Thing of beauty. So I'm going to comment these out. And let's comment those and save. And now we need to think about our resource access. So we've already got our gametools.npc access. It's got nothing in it. So the first thing I want to do is add a new item, and it's going to be an interface. And it's going to be npc access. Yeah. We're going to make it public. We're going to save. And we need a model to be able to pull this stuff in. So let's rename this class to NPC storage model. Yes. And we are going to thinkin'. Task of int get level lol. Save NPC. And it's going to receive an NPC storage model. And we're just going to call it NPC. And I don't like storage model. I'm going to change it to NPC access model. Yes. Receives an instance of the NPC model, saves it to storage, and returns its identifier if successful. Okay. Save. And that's all we're going to implement here for now. Returns a task with an int result. Now, what does NPC access model look like? Well, it's going to have a nullable int as NPC ID. I'm going to use a lowercase d for that. Prop string. Nope. Yeah. Species prop int user ID prop string vocation. What in the devil? All right. And what did I call the other columns here? Let's take a peek. User ID, species name, vocation name, character details, and is public. Prop, string, character details, prop, bool is public. Now you're going to see me repeat some code in a minute. CTOR, NPC access model, and species string.empty. Location string.empty. Character details string.empty. Okay. I can close DB access test and program. And I want to add a little bit of stuff to this. So NPC access model contains the filterable, contains the storage represent. Storage services, no. Describes the object that the NPC access service expects to receive and Visual Studio is taking a little nap, as it do. Come on. It might even crash. We'll see. Come on, you can do it. Silly thing. Oh, what are you doing? Oh, it came back to life. So expects to receive when storing NPCs generated by the Game Master Helper system. Get rid of that line. There we go. Okay. Good enough. NPC access receives an instance of the NPC model, saves it to storage, and returns its identifier if successful. Good. Task with an int result. I like it. Save. Now, that will form the public interface for the actual materialized service. Now, because I'm going to implement against SQL Server, I'm going to create a new project. Add a new project. Oops, another class library. Source. And I'm going to call it Game Tools. And I wish I could see all the stuff that I need to see here. Eek. Game Tools, because I want to match the case. Dot NPC PC access dot SQL Server. And it's going to go into project root, source, resource access. There we go. GameTools.npcaccess.SQL Server. Perfect. Next. We're going to use dotNet 8. Create. Excuse me. Let's bring in the NuGet packages that I know we're going to need. I'm going to shrink this over here. Browse. And I want to use Entity Framework Core.SQL Server. Hello, Mr. Codes. How do you do? So, dependencies, .NET 8, Framework Core Relational, SQL.Microsoft.Data.SQL Client. Make it so. Bam. I couldn't, based on the font size on my screen, I can't tell if it's Arabic or another southwestern Asian language. Excuse me. No, it definitely looks Arabic. Okay, so here's a whole bunch of stuff. Good Lord. Apply. Accept. And it's doing its thing. I think we have everything I need. Uh-oh, we've got some installed packages that probably have some security. Let's take a look at the package details here. Vulnerable. Let's update that right now. I mean, I don't need Azure Identity yet. Okay, good. We got rid of them. We still have more vulnerabilities. Show only vulnerable. System.formats, ASN bursts, or endure data formats. Let's go to 801. Go. Apply. I hope I didn't just blow up my package references. Oh, look, updates. Azure Identity. You know what? Heck with it. Just update. Go. Yes, apply. I accept. All right. Now I need to add a project reference to gametools.npc access. Okay. Now, gametools.npc access holds only the abstractions and the public interfaces. And I'm going to rename class 1 over here to NPC access SQL provider. And I'm going to try and spell everything right. Yes. Okay. Oh, I'm pretty all right. I am good. So this is going to implement INPC access. And we got to fix the formatting, implement the interface. Private I logger for NPC access SQL provider. Me, I am working on a D&D utility that's going to help me when I'm running my Dungeons & Dragons games. And yes, I'm introducing a logger right now. So just to give you an idea of what it looks like, I'll run it. Because none of this stuff that I'm working on right now, none of it's linked into the application. I got the UI to a point where it's kind of looking vaguely presentable. I'm not going to waste a whole lot of time on visual design at this point in time. I want to get storage going first. So I've also largely been targeting a mobile form factor thus far. So let's pretend I'm in a mobile. So when I'm running my D&D games, my players are always asking me, so what does the shopkeeper look like? And who are they? And so on. So I've got a shopkeeper profession here, and they're not retired. And I'm really bad at ad-libbing, so I'm just going to go ahead and generate a dragonborn with shiny blue scales who is running a shop that they have just walked into. And then if I want more details, I'm going to hit the AI description, which calls out to a local language model. And because I didn't start the LM server this morning, it came back right away with no results. So give me a second, and I'll try generating that again. Just gotta wait for the local language model server to start. Yes, I'm hosting everything locally on an old Windows laptop I found in like a closet somewhere in my house. And it turns out it's got an okay CPU, The GPU is pretty janky. I'm going to start over. Let's show. I want to generate a shopkeeper. Generate that. This time they're a gnome. And let's try generating the AI description this time. Now that I've got my AI server running. Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. Pop over here, make sure, yep, it's running, it's processing the prompt. And when this comes back, this display will update. How's it going, me when I may? Welcome to watching me write code. And it's trying to think, maybe, perhaps. Please send the seed attributes. Here we go. Now it's starting to generate. It's a good thing this Blazor client's in async mode right now. Otherwise, it would have timed out and thrown up all over me. And we can see that it's generating tokens and stuff like that in the background on my screen share. I gotta say, I'm impressed with the Microsoft Buy 3 mini model. Oh yeah, that timed out or something and didn't return anything to me. So I'm gonna head back. Oh goodness. Let's go back to NPC. Retired guard. Yeah, what the heck. Let's try generating this description again. How not am I? That's a really tough question to answer. That's a very tough question to answer. All right. Now it's chewing up the CPU. It's not using a whole lot of RAM, so that's nice. And sometimes the LM server cooperates with me and sometimes it doesn't. This time it seems to be going a little bit faster. My half elf is 181 years old, a retired guard, started off life as an outlander. Come on, buddy. You can do it. You can do it. And you can see, or you will see it if it actually returns. Sometimes the language model will make up words like upbrision. Her upbrision as a guard led her to develop skills crucial for protecting those she once swore to serve. Light olive complexion, complemented by long brown hair that cascades to her hips. Lyra wears practical clothing suited for guard duty, resourceful and cautious, often relying on her keen senses inherited from her half-elf lineage, so on and so forth. So this is a pretty decent AI-generated description of a randomly rolled non-player character. And so what I'm doing today is I'm standing up a Docker container that's going to run, or that's running SQL Server for me. And I'm building up a database so that we can store these NPCs. Now, I do need to change this from a public task to a public async. And I need CTOR. And I need to pass in an iLogger. Yep. For NPC access provider. Logger. I do not know that gigantic acronym infant codes. NPC access SQL provider. How about that? There we go. We'll go logger equals logger. I might have to change that to a logger factory. And private read-only string user data connection. User data connection. Boop. Commas on the upper line. String. Advanced research engineering and innovative formulas in high-tech field applications. That is the first time I have ever seen that mouthful of stuff. User data CN. Boop. I need to change that to an underscore because it's module level. Get rid of those extra parentheses. There we go. And user data CN equals that. Save. Yeah, I'm completely unfamiliar with that. So here's the outermost thing for our service. And now it's time to add a new folder. Let's call it DB context. And I'm going to add another model or another folder in here called SQL models. Add new item. And it's going to be a class. And it's going to be NPC access DB context. Bam. Okay. AI generated acronyms. Yeah, I don't tend to mess with those too much. All right. And internal, yes, I do want this to be internal because I do not want the dependency injection all the way out at the root of my project to know anything about the mechanics of connecting to the storage medium. So I'm not going to do a whole lot more here today. I am going to inherit from DB context, fix the formatting, change DB no. What are you talking about? excuse me, use Microsoft dot Entity Framework Core dot, yeah, no, that's what I want. Let's rename this. Context, there we go. DB context, good. NPC access, DB context, protected, good. String CN. All right, and that's going to pass up. And for the SQL models, add a new class, and it's going to be called NPC row model. Boop. And it too is going to be internal because I don't want to leak my storage stuff out. Table is NPCs. Schema equals user data. Cool. All right. I don't know what the heck me when May is even saying. Streamlabs doesn't let me do stuff. Yeah, okay. Okay, so here's where I'll set up the columns and so on and so forth for this. And I think we are going to leave this where we're at for today. Tomorrow, new class, go away. I'm going to create a dependency helper, add, we're going to make it public static, and that's where we're going to leave off for the day. Tomorrow we're going to get this hooked into the dependency injection and the configuration and all that stuff, and we'll see about actually pushing a created model or a created NPC out to our database. And Indpon, I have no idea. I think it's just a random phrase generator that's logged into my chat. And for some reason, Streamlabs doesn't let me like hit them with a ban hammer. So until tomorrow, I am that developer dad. Go drink water. If you're stuck in this hurricane stuff in the southeast US, please be careful. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your neighbors. And be good to yourselves. Later on, gang.